Okay, so Jellyfish Dreams. So as we said before, we forgot to record this the first video. Liz has a novella, and it's about a. Actually, Caleb, do you want to fill us in on what it's about? I can't be bothered.
Absolutely, yeah. It's about a basically a adamant secularist. I don't know if that's be the right way. Atheist, I guess, an adamant atheist scientist guy who finds a hole in his couch, a hole that goes nowhere. Basically, it's infinitely deep, and that's gets the attention of the entire world, and basically things spiral out of control around that observation. But it also sort of plays into his personal life and his sort of trying to understand his girlfriend slash fiance's death. And he sort of, I'll get into it later, but sort of, I think, in a weird way, tries to rationalize those two things as one. And also there's Jellyfish. So there you go.
Yeah,
Awesome.
they show up later in the story, but anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. The guy who wrote it is called M. Thomas Gammarino. That's a really cool last name, actually. It's almost as good as Goronitis.
Almost.
He's previously written a novel called Big in Japan, a ghost story. But apart from that, I can't find anything about this guy. He's a mystery. He managed to get onto the Kindle Single list, which is really difficult. You have to be a really good author to get on there. And he's been compared to Philip K. Dick in style. Apart from that, I can't find anything else. So let's just break right into it. So, general thoughts first of all. Dean, do you want to start off?
Yeah, this is a hard one for me to work out, I guess. The initial premise really got me going, and I have a feeling that's probably what got you going too, was just the mystery of having a hole in the floor. And I think, Caleb, you said that it went nowhere, which it is partially true, but I think what's actually, which makes the hole kind of cool, is not really that it goes nowhere, but that nobody knows where it actually does go, which is obviously really plays with your head. And it's one of those things where you want to read to find out where the hole goes, but you almost hope the author never tells you, because the answer probably will never actually live up to the hype of reading about it. But so I thought it was kind of going to be like, the short plot based, this is a story and we're going story first. Not necessarily sci-fi, but fantasy-esque, whatever, something cool like that. And then, as you mentioned, it quickly kind of turns over into his girlfriend passing away and turning into a love story, and a depressing kind of love story, and kind of goes from just basic plot-based fiction to really more of like a literary fiction type feel, where you're starting to talk about things that don't necessarily have to do with plot progression. I suppose it all has to do with plot progression, but it wasn't as exciting once we started hearing about that, and that kind of turned me off. But then it came right back into it, and kind of left that to the wayside, and he's starting to do some crazy stuff, and I don't know how much we want to give away detail-wise, but it gets really exciting again. Really bizarre things happen. A bagel talks to him, for example, for one little psychedelic moment there. So I was kind of left like, I don't know if I can't really tell if I liked it or not, but I think it left a good enough impression on me that I would be willing to tell people they're not wasting their time by reading it.
Yeah, I definitely have mixed feelings as well. When I started off, I was I was really into it. Like, it was really exciting. It's like he's found the black hole, and like
Right.
it was just going really fast.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, sweet. And then after that, it just kind of the tone just was bizarre. It just kept changing. It was like 1 minute you're talking about something really deep, like what could be in the black hole, and then the next minute you're talking about like his girlfriend dying of cancer, and then like faith and like the importance of existence, and it's like, and then some shit happens at the end. It's like, what? It's craziness. It's absolute craziness.
I should mention actually really quick that Liz hasn't read the book, so you might see her kind of quiet during this section here, but she hasn't read.
During most
so hopefully,
sections. No, I'm kidding.
so I think our goal then will be to get her to basically at the end of this, Liz, you tell us, is it something that you would have read or something you would not have read given the chance?
That's a good idea.
We'll keep that.
So far, not.
If I can, I'd like to point out like three things that for me, either seemed unnecessary, or I did not understand, or he didn't tie them up properly, and see what you two think about that. One, the time 2:43 a.m. was mentioned, I believe, 3 times for 3 different reasons. I want to say it was the time she passed away, the time he climbed out of his house when there were news reporters around his house to go get food, and then he hit somebody with the car. And there was one other time 2:43 came up, and there's no real reason why those 3 time mentions are together. I don't really get that. And then there was the random, like, page or 2 long New Year's Eve sex scene that he had with his girlfriend, and I didn't really get why that had to be included at all. Didn't really develop the characters, didn't develop the plot, just kind of whatever there. And it looks like that was actually 2, not 3. So those were the 2 I had.
I can probably speak. Yeah, the time I don't understand at all. The sex scene, I'm guessing, was trying to develop he was trying to do a flashback, I think, to develop their relationship, to basically make the reader believe later on when he starts to be angry, and that's why he turns away from religion, is because, he was able, basically, the sex scene, I think, was supposed to establish that he was able to have sex with something gross because she's not an attractive girl. That's how he portrays her, and so I think that was kind of the way to say, no, see, I really do love her because I can look past how gross and disgusting she is and still have sex with her. That's a horrible thing, right. But that's basically what the book was trying to say, and and so then later on when he starts, she dies, and we kind of meant to understand that they truly had some kind of connection. So when she dies, we really want to believe that he is destroyed by it, and that's kind of why he turns away from religion altogether. That's kind of what I took from it, but it did seem out of place because they didn't carry it on. It was just there, and then they moved on. And it's almost like it was an afterthought. Like, he wrote the whole thing, and he's like, crap, no one's going to believe that he would turn against religion simply because his girlfriend died. I better throw something in there to show that he really did care about her, That's what I
remember the third one before I'll let you speak. Sorry to take over again. But the last one that bothered me was there's like this really lazy writing, at least for me. Something gross happens and whatever, and he's describing the smell, and he said so putrid that even a writer who has lots of time can't describe it. And I just thought that was really lazy, and I'll throw that too.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. I thought it was like a cool fourth wall breaking thing. Yeah. I don't know, I like it a bit. I didn't notice anything with the times. Like, I didn't even, until you mentioned it, I had no idea. I was just glazed over it. I'm like, oh, story.
Right.
Little details. I agree with Caleb. That sex scene was kind of necessary. Like, the whole relationship building necessary in order to establish what happens at the end. My problem with the story has to do with what happens at the end. That kind of twist involving Jellyfish. So that came out of nowhere. That wasn't explained at all. They just what was the deal there? I just generally don't know what happened. It's just like you got this black hole, and then out of nowhere these jellyfish. It's like,
see, that's the bizarre weirdness that I was kind of hoping for in the beginning, that it would be like a really weird story about an army of jellyfish and just like this bizarre, weird kind of story. But then when you mix it in with like your classic normal love story is when it all starts to me kind of come across as, I don't know which way to go with it.
I think the jellyfish, I had a tough time reconciling the end as well. I mean, it was what I mentioned, what I kind of alluded to up front when I was describing the story, and that it did culminate in sort of this. It was almost the author had these two separate ideas, and that's actually a really good way, I think, to start a story, is to have two conflicting, completely unrelated ideas and somehow make them work in a story. If you think about it, a lot of stories actually are built around that very idea. Two completely different subjects, mash them together in the same world and make it work, because there's inherent tension there, because as the author you're trying to figure out how to make these things work. It sounds like that's what he was trying to do, but he didn't realize that he had to reconcile them until the end, and he's like, crap, I better hurry up, I gotta do something. And so I honestly think he should have, this book could have been 20 more pages. I really wish it would have been 20 more pages, and it would have been a little bit more. I mean, he peppers in the idea of there's a species of jellyfish that can basically kill itself, and it doesn't procreate the way that other species do. It kind of dies, and then from its own corpse it is reborn as itself. So I think that was where the jellyfish were supposed to come from. Like all of these people, these jellyfish soldiers, I took as being the people who went into the black hole. They were
Reborn as the jellyfish. It wasn't explained.
I just didn't feel like
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
enough, you know?
If they had an explanation there, I think I would have been fine with it. But at the moment, it's just like they just glaze over it. It's just like they're fighting, and then the story ends. It's like, what happened?
It ended
It
way
was a black hole, and
yeah, it's unresolved. For
Here's
sure.
a question for you guys. Did you think the author's note, which is the end of the story, the last few pages, was necessary? Did it make it better, or would it have been better if it ended without it?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I hated it, and I think it was necessary, but I hated it because the one of my notes during the entire story. Okay, the story is told in this third person perspective, but it's a third person perspective with subjective reasoning. So it's basically this. It's like a person outside of the story is telling the story, and this voice is peppering the story with its own observations, but they never tell you who that person is that's talking. And so the whole story, I'm like, this is a major writing. This doesn't work. And it wasn't until that last chapter that I was like, okay, someone else was writing the story, and I felt a little cheated, and I wish that would have been brought up at the beginning. But
are you sure the whole story is written by a third party? I mean, I just assumed it was just the narrator talking, just describing everything. I just
but who's the
assumed that
narrator? I
last
guess is
little
what I'm
bit.
asking. I mean, if a narrator's talking, you gotta know who that narrator is, because if
Do you?
yeah, because
I assume you don't.
there's sections in there where they'll be like, and then all of a sudden Sam, because it wasn't from Sam's. I think Sam was the name of the guy. It wasn't like his perspective or his observation.
Because
I don't know if we were seeing different perspectives of different characters, but there were definitely some subjective observations that felt as though it wasn't. It was too subjective. It was people giving it was a voice giving its opinion on what was going on rather than just telling you what was going on. She did this and it was gross, or he did that and blah blah. But let the reader make those observations or those opinions. Just tell me the observations of a third person, and that kind of.
I don't know if it distracts anybody else,
But it just bothered me, I guess. I wish I
guess
had.
it's a preference thing.
Yeah.
Because I like that kind of thing when you have a third person perspective and they kind of put in their personality and they never explain why. I like that. I think that adds flavor to it, even if it's distracting from the story. I mean, you don't have to go as long as you just pepper it in. I'm fine with that. But I guess when I was reading it, I didn't notice any subjective stuff. I mean, I couldn't identify anything, but
I wish I had
perhaps there's
Kindle.
something there.
I quoted it, but maybe in the description or something.
No, there were a few. I can't think of them either, but there were a few moments where you notice it's like this isn't the point of view of God looking down. This is the point of view of somebody remembering. Yeah, whether or not you like not knowing who that person is, I suppose can be argued. But
Okay, phrasing is there we go. It's all back together now. So would you guys read anything else by this author? Is that the question?
I absolutely would. I really liked it, honestly. When it all comes down to it, problems aside, I actually really, really like this story. So
I'd read another single. I don't know if I'd go for a full novel yet.
Yeah, I would probably read something else by this guy. Maybe something completely different. I'd like to see him tackle something completely different. Even something that's just realistic instead of this speculative fiction. Even though I like speculative fiction, perhaps something different. Because I know that he's got a novel. I think it might be a graphic novel. I'm not 100% on that, but yeah, I could give this guy another go. Definitely, he had some really cool ideas, and throughout the whole book, I was just stopping and just thinking about shit. So that's always a good sign. It means you've expressed your thoughts well, and you can come up with some good stuff. But so Liz, would you read this book if you were forced to do it?
I mean, I think with the length, I would be okay with it because I have already bought it. But it's still very I still I feel like I almost have to experience it myself to be okay, this is a book I like or don't like. But yeah, I think it sounds kind of intriguing, but at the same time, I'm just I don't know. It's not my usual stuff, but yeah.
What do you guys? Do you think this book would have been more fun if the entire girlfriend aspect of it would have been taken out and it was just a black hole and an army of jellyfish, and that was like a Twilight Zone episode in a weird way?
Kinda, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It gives it its own kind of charm. It's just the whole package, I think, that is Mr. Gammarino's style that I wouldn't tamper with. But if you, yeah, I don't know.
I gotta actually. I think Dean, you might be the only one who's read House of Leaves, but I got a House of Leaves feel from it, because the whole book of House of Leaves is basically like they find a hole in the house, and it's a big deep house, but they go so far as to like rappel down into the hole and try to explore it and all this kind of stuff. And I maybe that's what kind of drew me into it and made me like it a little bit more, because I kind of had an association with it. House of Leaves is one of my favorite novels of all time, so that could be it possibly. I do think that if it were focused around the black hole and we were just to look at that, and maybe it was cut down 20 pages or so and it was just a black hole and exploring that'd be pretty cool too, because that's the sort of concept I was alluding to earlier, where I just like conceptual fiction. If it like a certain concept or a weird idea, just seeing how that weird idea affects the characters is always interesting to me.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for when I first started reading the first few pages. I don't know if I can say the girlfriend made it worse, but it kind of definitely took me for I don't know what the word is, whatever, and kind of like, oh, that wasn't really what I was hoping for upon first reading it. But it does make me wonder, now that I know, if I would enjoy it more the second time I read it.